My family and I would like to thank every one of you for the outpouring of support you've given us over the past few days. A special thanks to those of you who were by our side in Croatia and to those who worked tirelessly to get Craig home while showing us such incredible compassion and kindness. Special thanks to Andy, James, the Hyundai racing team and the Croatian authorities who moved mountains over the last few days. There really are no words to describe how grateful we are to you. But I wanted to say a few words about my little brother, the guy behind the helmet. Bear with me because he was far better than I'll ever be to find the perfect words when a microphone was pointed his way. Craig made this slightly easier for me though, because along with his huge achievements in life, he left behind a truckload of fond memories and hilarious stories. Those who know Craig affectionately tell stories about him having a happy knack of just arriving at their door, having sent a very last minute, "I'll be with you in 10" text. And when you were lucky enough to catch him, you were usually given a night of laughs, mockery and slagging over copious cups of tea. But he was a rogue for also leaving a little job after him for you. And this one is by far the hardest job he's left for all of us. Craig was the cutest child, placid, easygoing. All he wanted day in, day out was to play with something that had wheels. And it seemed the world also wanted him to focus on what he loved the best. At his first and last soccer lesson, he fell and hit his head, off to A&E for clips. And we'll never figure out how his keyboard lesson also ended up with him having to get 7 stitches in his face. We're so lucky that my mother loved any opportunity to take a photo, or even better, a video. And we have copious amounts of footage of us as kids, particularly with our neighbours, the Powers, who are really our extended family. We had a fabulous childhood, which even took us all to Disney World at a young age. At the end of a holiday, the video camera came out and we all recorded a little snippet of how much we had enjoyed ourselves. At Craig's turn, he was asked, "Is there anyone you'd like to thank, Craig?" Expecting him to thank Mum and Dad, he flashed a huge smile into the camera. "Yes, thank you to Ger and Val for bringing me here." He was always a bit unpredictable and different, but you never got a boring answer from our Craig. Craig was happiest when he was tearing around in whatever would allow him to enjoy the fastest speed. He gave years pedalling a go-kart around our house, and then eventually onto his petrol cart, where he upgraded to going up and down the driveway and eventually to up and down the road. Neighbours remember hearing him coming, zipping up and down in his beloved noisy cart, with my poor dad and Val as his marshal, standing in the cold checking for cars. He loved to push things to their limits, seeing what he could make them do and what fun he could knock out of them. He was only 5 minutes out on his new quad in the field close by when my mother got a call from his friend, "You better come back down, Jackie, the quad is on its roof." He gravitated towards anyone who smelled of oil and had an early love for our neighbour John, who fixed cars in his garage. This love became hilariously apparent when my mum went to collect him from play school one day around Valentine's Day, and all the little boys and girls arrived out with their handmade hearts for their mammies. The teacher quickly pulled my mother aside to say, "Jackie, I'm so sorry, but Craig insisted on dedicating this one to John Purcell." He was always a softie. He wasn't cut out for the rough and tumble that boys usually enjoy in their childhood. He would often be found hiding when some of our cousins came to visit. They'd just bowl him over if he was in the way. He was ridiculously generous, and although his talents gave him a very nice life and some really flash trimmings, he really had no mass on any of that. He poured a lot of what he got back into the sport. My dad and him would often be in cahoots chatting about what rally car to next add to their collection, my mother never getting a straight answer when she used to ask, "Lads, you don't need any more now. How many of them have you had at this stage?" He wasn't always the easiest to get to know, and during our early years, Dara would make an effort by going to his room to play Colin McRae Rally. Craig would be delighted and would often tell him, "I'll do this one and you can do the next stage," only to get to the end and tell him, "I'll just do this one too," leaving Dara sitting watching him for the night. Our family really did share Craig with the world, but on the occasions where he did make it home to us, usually unannounced and with a pile of washing, he loved nothing more than to pan out with the dominoes and goggle box. The arrival of his godson Bobby saw him back a little more frequently, and it soon became apparent the bond that they shared. It helped that 2-year-old Bobby is as obsessed with cars and wheels as his uncle Craig, and he already had to be reined in after asking at Christmas, "When could I get him a cart?" Most of you know Craig really wasn't grateful of much during his school days, but a pairing with Bobo on day one was probably the best education they could have given him. Bobo showed a yearbook snippet of Craig recently, and it perfectly showed his infamous honesty when asked, "Best moments in school?" And he replied, "None, it was all brutal." Mam always anxiously attended his parent-teacher meetings as anything could be said, but the career guidance teacher gave him the same lecture every year. "I don't know what planet he lives on, but he thinks he's going to drive cars for a living. You'll have to have another word with him," followed by an eye roll. He never forgave my poor mum and dad for insisting he get his leaving cert, and his attitude towards it was clear. When on the day of his results were released, he was off karting with Dad. I called to ask how he got on, and he told me, "The first round was good, but I had to change my tyres for the second loop." And when I laughed and said, "No, Craig, you're leaving cert," he said, "Oh, Mum, I went down for them, she might know." The past few days have given us an insight into a whole other world Craig discovered when he finally found the place he belonged within his motorsport family. It was then he really felt at home, no matter where he physically was, surrounded by the people who embraced every part of him. Craig would do anything to avoid making people upset. He'd shy away from anything that would put him in a position to make anyone feel bad. It seems so cruel now when his friends and family are living through such hurt. He would hate to see tears shed on his behalf. He'd much rather see people reliving good times, sharing fond memories. Craig is lucky enough to have had one in a million story, or he will live on through his legacy, so please keep his spirit alive for all of us. His school yearbook send-off quote was that he wanted to make people proud. Well, Craigie, I can safely say, mission accomplished.